What Richard Haynes did to Jennifer in their Greenacre home will see him leave prison in a body bag.
Try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody and stained from the people who deceive me.
Jennifer Margaret Linda Haynes was just 6 months old when her father Richard Haynes began and torturing her. She developed her first personality named Sympathy before the age of 1 in order to survive the trauma she was forced to endure. It would be the first of multiple personalities that would help her become a survivor of some of the most horrific abuse ever, in which the victim survived and was able to tell her story. Because this case does involve abuse of a child, viewer discretion is advised. Hello, my name is Holly. Welcome to the Murder She Shed, where all your true crimes addictions get fed, and I discuss rarely told true crime right from my she shed. Make sure you hit that subscribe button in order to find this gal in this big YouTube world, because sometimes a girl can get lost in here. Jennifer, or Jeni as she is now called, was born in January of 1970 in Bexley Heath, UK, to Richard and Patricia Haynes. While she was in her mother's stomach, Jeni's abuse had already begun. Her father poured gin down her mother's throat and threw her mother down the stairs, trying to get Patricia to abort Jeni. Richard even refused to name Jeni after she was born, so Jeni's mother chose her name. Jeni never remembered her father and mother showing any love or affection to each other or their children. Richard was an electronics engineer. He smelled like the inside of a television, a putrid mix of burning backlight and sweat. Her mother, Patricia, was a shorthand typist and a very quiet woman who Richard could easily control. She will find out he is all about power and control, and he tries to manipulate everyone like that, including his children. He gets off on power, and that's why I believe he chose Patricia, because he could easily control her. Jeni had an older sister and a brother that was 3 years younger than her. At 6 months old, the abuse was like touching. At 1 year old, it escalated to oral sex. At 2, she was already being raped. First time she remembers being raped, and probably because it was so traumatic. She was tied to a table by her neck with a belt, and when Richard's 2-year-old little daughter screamed from pain, he stuffed a piece of fabric in her mouth. When Patricia took Jeni to the doctor for crying all the time and rocking back and forth, the doctor must have been an idiot. I don't know, maybe back then they didn't know that rocking back and forth was a sign of trauma. Either way, he was still an idiot, because if he had done any sort of physical exam, he could tell that she was being abused, but he did not. So the doctor told Patricia, "Jennifer cries because she likes the sound of her voice." Patricia took those words and held on to them for Jeni's entire life, labeling her as an attention seeker. Not only did she rock back and forth because it's a sign of trauma, but also it helped ease the pain in her bottom to take pressure off of it. For the first 5 years of Jeni's life, she created 100 or more new alters or personalities a week, depending on how violent her dad was that week and how often he abused her. It was her only way of coping and taking herself out of the trauma while it was occurring. It helped to be someone else during those times. As an SA survivor myself, only my SA was from a neighbor, I can totally relate to this. I didn't think about inventing other personalities, but I did disassociate from what was happening to me as a 6-year-old child. I would almost say like a trance-like state to cope with it. I mean, most of you have been in shock before, like with a sudden death of someone, maybe after a car wreck. In my case, when I was in the house and a tornado came and destroyed my house. And also as a child like this, you go into this shock where your brain almost shuts down and you're in this trance, and that's how we often deal with it. But for Jeni, it turned into, she went into these other personalities because it was easy for her to deal with what she had to endure. And I can absolutely see how this could have occurred. Maybe if I'd even thought of it, I would have done that as a child. So back to the story, and this does get bad quickly, so warning. After Jeni turned 4, the family packed up and moved to Australia. Soon after the move, her father started sticking objects in her bottom. The first is a crochet hook, then knitting needles of various widths, the handle of a wooden spoon, both ends of a black and yellow screwdriver, the handle of a hammer, a chisel, and a burning soldering iron. He called all of this a game. It was like a ritual, as he would call it when she was older. He would start from the smallest object and go to the larger object, and he got it out of order, he'd start back over. I know, it's awful. Not only this, he wouldn't even call his little girl Jeni. He called her by degrading names. Daddy's dirty little girl, a floozy, a trollop, a masochist, and never ever used her name. In 1976, they bought a house in Greenacre, Australia, and Jeni started school. The house had an outside toilet. Richard saw the outhouse as an opportunity because Patricia told the children they couldn't lock it when they went in case they got hurt while they were in there. So the outhouse soon became a personal hell for Jeni. Richard's garage was just on the other side of the backyard, near the outhouse, and he would wait for his prey to enter the outhouse and then attack. Jeni began to use the bathroom on herself because she was too afraid to go into that outhouse. And I can't blame her because what she had to endure in that outhouse was horrific. From the age of 7 to 11, Richard forced Jeni to give birth on her birthday. It sounds strange because it is. He would insert a cylinder object inside of her and tell Jeni to push it out. Each time he produced a naked doll covered in slime and showed Jeni the doll she had given birth to. I have no words of why a man would do this. It is one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard. To do to a child. Pretend like they gave birth. How did he get off on that? At some point, Jeni learned that she could crawl underneath the house in order to get away from her father's abuse. Although it stopped the abuse from happening at that time, it would only make it worse later when Richard would find her. Jeni's older sister, Sheila, was never essayed by her dad, at least when she was younger. He only saved that kind of torture for Jeni. He did threaten to essay Sheila if Jeni didn't comply to his demands. Jeni was told never to tell anyone or he would hurt her mom or Sheila. Richard once showed her a picture of a woman who had caught fire in an armchair, leaving only a pile of ashes and a severed leg, and told her that would happen to her mother if she told anyone about the abuse. Sheila, her sister, was Jeni's reason for living. She was the first thing Jeni thought about when she woke up in the morning. Whatever torture Richard put her through, she knew she had to put up with it in order to protect Sheila. Keeping Sheila safe was Jeni's purpose in life. She loved her sister more than anyone else in the world. In the year 1977, over 1,000 altars walked out the back of Jeni's mind. All of the personalities had one goal: to keep Sheila safe no matter the cost. There was one thing that made Jeni happy, and it was being in the school choir. Jeni loved to sing and had the voice of an angel. It took her away from the horrific world she lived in, often singing in her head while she was getting essayed. If Richard heard Jeni sing out loud at home, he told her that she sounded horrible and not to do that. And then he had something that she could do with her mouth instead. One night when Jeni was sick and burning up with fever, her dad came in the room and began to essay her. She started screaming and her mom heard her, so Richard realized Mom was coming, jumps off the bed and covers Jeni up. When Patricia enters the room, Richard said she just had a bad dream and he would take care of her. So Patricia went back to bed. And Richard then finished taking care of himself by continuing the abuse. There was even one time he almost killed her. Like he did when she was a little girl, he tied her up by the neck. I guess it tightened as he was doing what he was doing, and she passed out during that. And he didn't think he was going to get her back. He was calling her name and trying to get her to wake up. Probably calling her bad words, not her name. But anyway, she did. She survived it. But she really said she came close to death on that one occasion. One evening, Richard was brushing Jeni's hair. It was all knotted, and he called it a rat's nest. Richard gave up brushing and dragged Jeni into the bathroom. He pushed her in front of the mirror and yelled, "Look at you, you're ugly, 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 so ugly that you could break the glass." From that day forward, Jeni avoided her reflection at all costs. She didn't brush her teeth, get dressed, or comb her hair in front of the mirror. Her dad's insults affected her for years because at that moment in front of the mirror, she was Jeni and not one of her other personalities. Because of this, Jeni did feel ugly. She felt unwanted. She felt unloved. She felt like she could kill herself at times because she had to endure so much. She didn't understand why she was getting treated like this. Although he beat on others in the family, he didn't treat anybody as bad as he did Jeni. And she thought at times that maybe she did deserve it. Maybe she was ugly. One of the times she actually tried to tell her mom about the abuse. She told her mom, "I don't like Daddy's games." But during that moment, Richard came into the room and said, "That's because you don't play fair." Jeni looked at her dad's evil glare and decided she was too scared to say anything else. When Jeni was 8 and her brother was 5, they were playing with Legos in a sink in the laundry room, just like children would, when her dad came in and began essaying her in front of her brother. Richard told her brother, "One day you'll be old enough to do this." When Jeni turned 9, her older sister became involved in a church and spent many weekends away from home with their friends from the church. This gave Richard free rein to Jeni at night since the girls shared a room at home. With Sheila gone, he would essay Jeni all weekend long. Jeni decided she might be safer. She started going to church with Sheila. But while there, Jeni told a couple about what her father was doing to her at home, because she thought she actually might receive some help. And instead, the man she told started essaying her too. At 10 years old, Jeni began throwing up and gaining weight in her stomach. But at 10, she didn't understand what was happening to her. She believed that she could have a worm in her stomach since sometimes she felt a little wiggle feeling inside. Richard realized that Jeni was pregnant. The first thing he tried was poison her to try to kill the baby, which didn't work. When that didn't work, he grabs a knitting needle, jabs it up in her and digs around. And then he violently essays her after doing that. I just found that so disturbing. It was just extra disturbing to me. I don't know what it is with him and babies, having babies and him getting off, but it's just super disturbing. He was a sick man. So that didn't work. So the next day, she was still pregnant. Richard grabbed his belt, lashed her stomach with the metal buckle. He puts on his lace-up black shoes and kicks her in the stomach. He folds his hands into a fist and he hits her in the stomach as hard as he can. Jeni passed out from the pain. A couple of days later, Jeni feels severe pain in her stomach. She was only 10 years old, as I said, and had no idea what was happening to her. She went to the outhouse because she felt like she might be trying to have a bowel movement. But she started bleeding. There in the toilet, she miscarried what she thought was the first of 7 babies that she had miscarried. But later, a detective would discover Jeni had been pregnant 5 times before she even turned 11. And between 11 and 14, 2 more times she miscarried. It wasn't until her older sister Sheila turned 13 that Richard began to notice Sheila and he began to groom her. Only with Sheila, he enjoyed giving her gifts and pampering her into submission. With Jeni, it had always been about beatings and tortures, and that's the only way he could get off is if he hit her first and beat her first. He'd often take his belt off and just beat her relentlessly, and then he could get off after he did that. But with his other daughter, it was different for some reason. One day after Patricia came home from work, she caught Richard doing stuff to Sheila on their couch. And this is when she decided it was time to head out the door. But the marriage didn't officially end until Sheila was 16 and Jeni was 14. Jeni's last our father was in February 1984. He told Jeni that even though he wouldn't be near her, he could still hear her thoughts, and if she ever even thought of telling, he would send someone to kill her. He said there would be a knock at the door, and when she opened it, the person, it could be a man, woman, or child, would kill her. So she was scared, and she never spoke of it again until she was grown. After the divorce, Sheila was so brainwashed, she went to live with her dad. And she was 16, so her mother could not force her to stay with them. Jeni's dad had destroyed her bowels so much that defecating was almost impossible without pain and blood. He broke many of her ribs and dislocated her pelvic bone. He left her with nerve damage, calcified ligaments in the jaw, and a clicking jaw. Patricia began worrying about Jeni when she noticed she was constantly talking to herself. So she took her to the doctor. Must have been the same doctor as when she was a child, because he's still not any wiser, apparently. The doctor's diagnosis was Jeni just has an imaginary friend. She will grow out of it. At the age of 24, after reading a book, Jeni realized that she might suffer from multiple personality disorder. In 1996, Sheila called her sister and said that her dad's abuse was getting violent and she wanted out. After Sheila escaped, she went to the police. This gave Jeni the courage to begin to tell her story too. Richard was arrested. He went to trial in September of 1997. Richard pled guilty to 9 out of 11 of the charges relating to Sheila, including the creation of Child P and SA. However, Richard pleaded not guilty to the charges relating to Jeni. He denied everything when it came to her. Richard was sentenced just to 9 years in prison for his crimes against Sheila, and Jeni received no justice. Jeni started seeing a psychiatrist in 1998, who finally diagnosed her with multiple personality disorder as a result of severe childhood abuse. Meeting Dr. George Blair West changed everything for Jeni. The first time Richard's case had gone to trial, Jeni hadn't told her whole story, but now she felt strong enough to do that. So finally in 2009, she went to the police and told every last detail. Jeni was sent to a medical doctor where substantial damage was found on her bottom, which caused her severe bowel problems. She even had to have surgery to repair the damage. Parts of her anus, bowel, and tailbone was removed. She even had to have a colostomy bag. It was so bad. At her dad's trial, over 2,500 of Jeni's personalities showed up to join her on the stand against her father. This army of alters included 4-year-old Sympathy, teenage motorcycle-loving Muscles, forthright Judas, and 8-year-old Ricky. They got her through some very horrific trauma during her childhood, and Jeni says she would not have survived without her other personalities.
She spent decades begging to be believed. That all changed the day Detective Sergeant Paul Stimulus took on her case.
God on legs, yes.
God on legs.
God on legs, yes.
Why do you say that?
Because Paul Stimulus has believed me from the very first moment.
And so began a confronting police investigation that spanned almost 10 years.
Oh my God.
And we just kept on going. And it did take a toll on... Sorry, guys.
That's all right. No, but Paul, I'm sorry. It's okay.
It all paid off in 2017 when 74-year-old Richard Haynes was arrested and charged with multiple counts of buggery and indecent assault.
The day that we told her that we were going to be laying indictments against her father, that was an incredible moment.
Why was it a great moment for you?
Because it's something for Jeni, you know. All her life, this is what she wanted to do. Seek justice.
Richard Haynes at 77 was sentenced to 45 years in prison. Jeni had brought the whole army of personalities and finally received some justice. They're in trial. Every personality testified against that evil man. You know how they say it takes a village? Well, with Jeni, it actually did. In 2019, Jeni met a guy named Adam. For the first time, she was able to love a man. Jeni and Adam met at a Christmas party neither of them wanted to even be at, and bonded over their love of music. Over time, he met all 2,681 alters, but he was okay with it. In fact, he talked to the different alters and learned about each personality, and he learned to love Jeni. For Jeni and Adam's relationship, talking about consent was crucial. Fortunately, Adam was a gentleman. Because of the damage her dad caused to her body, she was unable to have children though. Jeni sued her dad for $840,000 in May of 2022 and won. She also wrote a book called The Girl in the Green Dress. That is where I got a lot of my information on this case. But I did leave out a lot of abuse that she endured because it's just so graphic and disturbing for YouTube. And just violent and awful. So I did leave a lot out. But if you'd like to read the book, you can find it on Kindle, The Girl in the Green Dress. Just a warning, what I've discussed is light compared to what is in that book. So Be careful if you have any kind of trauma experience from the past. It's pretty rough. It was very hard for me to even get through, and I've read a lot of things like that. So, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to get this case out because I haven't seen it too much on YouTube, and I wanted her story to be told. And my baby knows it's time for me to say bye because here he comes. He's coming over here where he can get to y'all better. Anyway, he wants to tell y'all bye, and then he wants to see y'all next time at the Murder She Shed. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can come see Simon and me. So you can find this Southern gal in this big YouTube world. Yeah, that thing. Because sometimes a gal can get lost in here. Should I start that back over? Did that suck? Or should I keep it in and just be real with you guys? Maybe I should just be real with you guys. I am a real type person and I make lots of mistakes. I am not a perfect person by any means. I just do the best I can. I'm not a detective. I'm not a cop. I'm just a lady that tells true crime. So quit nagging me all the time. I don't know what it is. I feel like my mom's nagging me sometimes when y'all's comment. I just love this one new comment that said I slaughtered the English language when Southerners have their own language. Yeah, you guys you don't from the South, you might not understand that. We speak our own language. It's not necessarily English, it's Southern English. It's a little different. So no, I didn't slaughter it. That's just the way we speak. You don't like it? Move along. Move along, Karen. Okay?
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain. Pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane. Pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the